The cabin lights stuttered as the jet hit rough air, trays rattling, ice clicking in glasses. Northwest Orient Flight 305 was between Portland and Seattle, and in seat 18, a man in a dark suit and clip-on tie watched the aisle like a camera that never blinked. The cigarette between his fingers burned short. He had bourbon and soda on the tray, a black attaché beside it, and a note he slid toward the stewardess without drawing attention. She tucked it away at first. He leaned forward and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. "Miss, you'd better read that. I have a bomb." The note was blunt. 4 parachutes, $200,000 in 20s, a fuel truck standing by in Seattle. No police near the plane. He cracked the case enough to show what looked like red cylinders, wires, and a battery. The stewardess carried the message to the cockpit, each step measured, the cabin's low hum suddenly too loud. Behind the locked door, Captain William Scott radioed the tower. The FBI began to move. Flight 305 continued north as if nothing had changed, the seatbelt light glowing politely while everything had. It was Wednesday, November 24th, 1971, the eve of Thanksgiving. The man had bought his ticket for cash at the counter, given the name Dan Cooper, and taken 18C with an aisle view of each approach to him. He was polite, mid-40s, maybe older, with neatly combed hair and dark sunglasses he wore even as dusk turned to night. He ordered bourbon, tipped, and gave calm instructions through the stewardesses, first Florence Schaffner, then Tina Mucklow, who began acting as the go-between. Seattle gathered the money, photographing and recording serial numbers. 4 parachutes were collected, including reserves, to reduce the chance he could force a crew member to jump with a sabotaged rig. While the 727 orbited Puget Sound to burn fuel, the hijacker set terms for the next leg. Fly south with the landing gear down, flaps at 15, cabin unpressurized, speed about 170 knots, altitude no higher than 10,000 feet. He wanted the rear air stair operable in flight. He wanted the cockpit door shut and the lights low. The language was clinical, like a checklist he already knew. The jet touched down at Seattle-Tacoma just after 5:30 p.m. Floodlights turned the rain to slanting silver. An airline agent brought the cash in a canvas bag and laid out 4 parachutes. The hijacker checked the money calmly, then let the 36 passengers and most of the crew go. He kept the flight crew, Scott, First Officer William Radakzak, Flight Engineer Harold Anderson, and Tina Mucklow. He ordered fuel for a run toward Mexico with a planned stop in Reno. Engines droned. On the ramp, armed men watched from a distance and did not approach. Night swallowed the plane again. Rain swept the windows. In his seat, the man counted bind-wrapped 20s and cinched the sack with a line. He selected a pair of civilian back chutes and cut shroud lines from one reserve to make extra ties. He asked Mucklow how to open the aft stairs. She showed him. He sent her forward and told the crew to maintain course toward Portland before turning south. He refused aid, food, or advice, only asking for the cabin lights to be dimmed and the air stair to be ready when he wanted it. Somewhere over southwest Washington, the cockpit felt the signal. At 8:13 p.m., an instrument linked to the stairs flickered with a pressure change, and the jet bobbed. The pilots added power to hold their airspeed. Wind raced through the cabin like a freight train. No one looked back. The order was to keep the door shut. The man in 18C was no longer in 18C. In freezing rain and strong winds, he stepped into the slipstream and was gone. The crew landed in Reno near midnight, the air stair still down. FBI agents boarded with flashlights and gloves. On the seat where he had sat, they found a black clip-on tie, a mother-of-pearl tie clasp, a few cigarette butts, and 2 remaining parachutes, one with cords cut. There was no bomb. There was no Dan Cooper. The search was immediate and punishing. The FBI and local sheriffs mapped a likely jump zone along the Lewis River and south of Mount St. Helens, timberland laced with logging roads, swamps, and fast water. Air Force planes flew grid patterns. Ground teams pushed through cold rain and brush. Nothing surfaced. No body, no canopy, no money. Winter closed in, spring opened, and the serial number list went to banks, casinos, racetracks, and newsrooms across the country. Leads poured in by the box. Paratroopers with rough edges, ex-cons who talked too much, airline workers with grudges. The Bureau compared fingerprints, polygraphed witnesses, and filled file cabinets. In April 1972, another skyjacker, Richard McCoy, pulled off a similar crime out of Denver, jumped with cash over Utah, and was caught. Some agents thought McCoy was Cooper. The flight attendants disagreed on height, voice, and manner. McCoy later escaped from prison and was killed in a shootout. The Cooper file stayed open. Years passed. Then, in February 1980, a family on a picnic along the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington watched their 8-year-old dig into a sandbar and lift out 3 rotting bundles of 20s. The serial numbers matched the ransom. About $5,800 had broken loose and settled on a stretch of beach called Tina Bar. The find refueled the case and tangled it. If the bills reached the Columbia, did Cooper land near the Lewis and lose the bag in high water? Did the river move the cash from somewhere upriver? Or had someone planted it? The rest of the ransom has never been found. In the lab, technicians studied the tie he left behind and found tiny particles of titanium and other traces common in certain manufacturing lines in the early 1970s. That clue pushed some investigators toward suspects who worked around aircraft or chemical plants in the Seattle area. Over the years, names piled up: a veteran who liked to jump and drink, a logger who died in a fall, a Boeing worker with a taste for puzzles, a drifter who made a deathbed claim. None could be placed on that plane with evidence that would stand up in court. The legend grew, while the file swelled past 60 volumes. Bars in the Northwest hosted Cooper gatherings every November. Hobbyists hiked the suspected drop zone with metal detectors and maps. Some insisted he died in the woods, parachute tangled high in firs. Others argued he walked out, cashed nothing to avoid the trap built into the serial numbers, and vanished by design. The truth did not move. The money on Tina Bar remains the only confirmed piece of the ransom ever recovered. In July 2016, after 45 years of chasing a ghost, the FBI announced it was suspending active investigation. They would keep the evidence and accept credible tips, but the daily work was over. What remains is a narrow band of facts. A man calling himself Dan Cooper boarded Flight 305 in Portland. He demanded cash and parachutes. He released the passengers in Seattle and directed the jet back into a storm. At 8:13 p.m. over southwest Washington, he lowered the stairs and jumped. From that moment, the trail goes dark. Picture the red light glowing over the open door, the rain knifing past, the engine noise collapsing into raw wind. The jet droned on toward Reno, instruments steady, crew silent, an empty aisle bleeding cold air through the cockpit door. Below, forest and river swallowed everything. One man fell through that dark with a bag of marked 20s and a parachute he chose on purpose. Either he found ground and breath and a way forward, or he didn't. The case rests between those two landings, and it has not budged since 1971. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.